Welcome back to Notes from the Edge. I'm your host, Lisa Lacy, writer, trauma educator, executive advisor, and these are the conversations we should have been having all along, the things we should be talking about but aren't. And today's conversation is very personal, not because I'm a physician or here to diagnose anyone, but because I have actually lived it. There was a period where I honestly thought, I've worked hard on my recovery, I'm done. I'm healed. I've done the trauma. And then I suddenly felt like I was falling apart again. Nothing in my life had changed that much, minus a surgery, but everything inside me had on a cellular level changed. My emotions became louder. My nervous system felt raw again. My confidence disappeared. My motivation completely evaporated, which was new for me. And the smallest stressors suddenly felt gigantic, and I could not explain it. So, what do? We start blaming ourselves, which I did. Maybe you've done that too. And maybe you've wondered, am I becoming unstable? Why don't I recognize myself? Today, if you're in midlife and you're a woman close to my age, about 50, I want to offer another possibility. Maybe your brain isn't broken. Maybe it's taking time to adapt to something new. Menopause is not just hot flashes. If I were to ask 10 people what menopause is, most would say hot flashes, night sweats, no more periods. And that's where the conversation ends. But menopause is actually one of the biggest neurological transitions a woman will ever experience. Because estrogen doesn't just affect your ovaries, it actually affects your brain. In fact, estrogen has receptors throughout the brain. It influences serotonin, the neurotransmitter most people associate with happiness. It influences your dopamine, which affects motivation, reward, and pleasure. It influences your GABA, which helps calm your central nervous system. It influences your norepinephrine, which influences attention and stress. It also affects your memory, learning, sleep, inflammation, and even how efficiently our brain cells communicate with each other. So, in menopause, when it starts fluctuating, or in my case, disappearing completely, your brain just isn't missing a hormone, it's recalibrating an entire communication network. So, imagine this: unplugging dozens of tiny electrical connections inside your house. Everything still works, just not the way it used to. So, this is why depression can suddenly appear. And it's something that a lot of women don't know because guess what? We're not talking about it. Depression during menopause doesn't always feel like depression. Sometimes it feels like, fuck it, I don't care anymore. You can feel exhausted, irritable, brain fog, crying over commercials or dogs, complete emotional numbness, or here's where shame enters. If you've always been a high achiever like me, you start struggling, and women who have always held it together all of a sudden cannot. And those of us who have spent decades caring for everyone else suddenly don't even have the energy to care for ourselves. Then comes in the guilt. I shoulda, woulda, coulda, should be stronger. I should handle harder things better. What's wrong with me? Nothing may be wrong with you. Your brain may simply be asking for support while adapting, and it will, to a completely new biological environment because trauma changes the equation. And this is the part I wish more people understood. Menopause doesn't happen in isolation. It happens inside your safety system, your survival system, your nervous system, the one you've built your entire life. If you've experienced childhood trauma such as domestic violence, PTSD, addiction, chronic stress, depression, anxiety, your nervous system has already worked incredibly hard to keep you functioning. Now, imagine asking that same nervous system to adapt to dramatically changing hormone levels. It's not surprising that things become louder for you. This does not mean you failed. It means your brain is working overtime and there's an additional layer. Many women have spent decades performing strength, holding it all together, being dependable, productive, the one people lean on. And menopause asks a terrifying question. What if I can't perform anymore? And that question, my friends, has a very little to do with hormones and everything to do with identity. For me, this wasn't gradual. All of this happened overnight. I underwent a hysterectomy, then unexpectedly, without my knowledge or consent, we thought they were going to stay. My ovaries were removed. My estrogen production dropped 95% in a few days to zero. It stopped. And because I have a congenital clotting disorder, any kind of therapy is not an option for me. So my brain had to figure it out. Without estrogen, preparation, warning, and I'll be honest, there were days where I had wondered where all that recovery that I worked so hard for had simply disappeared. Well, it hadn't. My biology had changed. And that realization changed everything. Because instead of what's wrong with me, I started asking, what does my brain need right now? And those are very different questions. We have to stop calling women crazy. Although I like the word crazy, I kind of own it. Thus, the name of my new memoir, Notes from a Certified Madwoman. But history has not been particularly kind to women. We've been called too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, too hormonal, too much. Meanwhile, our brains have been adapting to enormous biological shifts without any support. Think about it. We monitor blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, heart health. But when a woman suddenly develops depression during menopause, many people still assume it's psychological. But it's both. The brain and the body have never been separate, but somehow we treat them that way. And the brain is the only organ in the body that we will treat without even looking at it. We do not do genetic testing to make sure the drugs being thrown at us will actually metabolize in our body, which is available. And we certainly don't do brain scans to look at the brain. So, what do we do? Self compassion is key, not judgment. Sleep, as much as it can be difficult to get during menopause if you have insomnia, does become medicine. Some movement. I know your joints probably hurt, but some movement. There's a lot of information out there about simple movements that can just get your blood flowing and your lymph nodes draining. Nutrition becomes medicine. Connection becomes medicine. Knowledge becomes medicine. Boundaries, sometimes therapy, sometimes medication, and sometimes simply understanding what's happening to you becomes medicine. Because knowledge and information can remove the shame you may feel. And shame certainly will not help you heal because it is the lowest vibration we can carry. So if menopause has changed your mental health, I hope today's conversation gave you something incredibly important: language for what's happening to you. Because when we can at least name what's happening, we can stop blaming ourselves for it. And if you've been wondering why you don't feel like yourself anymore, please know this: it's not that you're losing yourself. Maybe you're meeting a version of yourself whose brain simply needs something different than it did 10 years ago. There is hope, there is help, there is absolutely nothing weak about asking for both. Thank you for spending this time with me and walking my menopausal journey with me. If this episode helped you understand yourself or someone you love, please share it out. There are millions of women quietly believing that they are the only one, and believe me, you are not. None of us are. A lot of us are going through this, and it's one of those conversations we're not talking about enough. I'm Lisa Lacy. This has been Notes from the Edge. Until next time, take good care of that brain of yours that's changing, because taking care of that can change your entire life. Welcome to the edge.